Hey there, this is Cardell. I have been learning a little bit more of React and just want to show you a project that I worked on to understand useEffect and useState within the front end portion of a application. We have once again the React front end, and then we have a Node.js back end, and in this program we have a Reddit API access. So basically, in the background, the backend, the actual server side, it basically just has an API. So we have like prepare flight and a flight URL that you access, and you post data to it, and then it spits back a JSON object. We have our Reddit set up here with a config.json file. Just pretty standard. We are using the link and the comment karma as your attack and your hit points. The health, more people have comment karma than link karma. So if you post a lot of comment or of actual content, like real posts, and people like it, then your attack gets higher. So it actually benefits you if you use the site and you just don't browse and leave comments on everything all the time. So that's how the prepare fight works. We have a dice roll, so we can roll a number of dice, and it will return a number between 1 and whatever sided dice you want to roll. So you could pass in roll dice 6, and it will roll a 6-sided dice or 20 or whatever. And in a case of an attack, we pass in the character's attack strength, and that's the number that it's going to roll up to. We have our fight API, which gets the player 1, player 2 attack and defense and their name, sets up the hit points for each person, and then it's going to simulate the rounds. Alright, so we have a round counter, starts at 1. We have an is crit, so that if we roll a 20, it's going to be a critical hit just like in D&D, and it will set this to true down here. The first roll die is a 6-sided dice roll to see if the two values, if the first one is bigger, it's player 1, otherwise it's going to be player 2. And then it will do basically math, damage, calculating damage, subtracting hit points, and then it creates a JSON object in this rounds of whatever round counter we're at, and has the who is attacking, and then the critical damage and the hit point results of the two people for each round. So we know what the health is at each stage, which is what we use in the front end, which we will get to in a second. If this first number is smaller, then we have player 2, and it does the exact same thing. Increment it, and then while they are both greater than or equal to 0, then it just keeps looping and subtracting until somebody's hit points goes to 0, and then it returns the rounds, the actual results of all the rounds. And that is the back end. It's very, very basic. The actual front end is essentially running React Bootstrap, so that we can do containers and all that kind of stuff. And we have the useState options here. So we have these are mainly for, the first two here, this is for the input boxes, and as you type in the input box, it changes the name down here, and if you type in this one, it changes this name, right? So that's what those useStates are. It just updates those, and if you actually pass in the parameters P1, Cardell, and P2 is Apple Rust, then it automatically fills in those two values. So that is on down here. So we grab the search, use the search parameters, and then we pull those two values. And then in our useEffect, we have checking to see if we have the value, and then we set the values and update everything for both parameters. We also have a can fight. This is so that it disables the fight button. When you click this, it will disable it until the fight is finished. So you can't just continuously query the server. We have a P1 adjust, which is adjusting based on the length of the name. It's adjusting the size of the box. So if I start adding characters on here, it's doing these values, right? So it's not the greatest. I need to adjust these a little bit more. This is like jumping, and if it's not one of these, it's doing the default. Not really, you know. You're supposed to have a default, and it throws like gives me a warning in there if I don't have it. So I might just do all 20 rows, but we'll see. Okay, so next. We have a sleep function. If you run the loop that we do to calculate all the damage and adjust the progress bar that's in the game, it goes really fast because it's running in the browser. So we have a sleep, and this is apparently a standardized way of running a JavaScript sleep function. So we are doing a promise and then returning when the timer is done. So what happens is when we fight, the first thing we do is we disable the button, set our current hit points to 0, so that if you're running a second fight, it resets everything until it gets a response back. It will also return if you delete the names for whatever reason. And then it calls the prepare fight, which is going to return the attack and defense. And then once it gets a result, it sets the max and current hit points for player 1 and player 2 from the results. And then if it is a success, then we have the await fetch, and we're going to pull the fight data, and that's what generates all of the rounds. And we're going to pass in, you know, the names, attack and defense for both players as the post body, and we get the results. To do fight animation, it'd be really cool to have your icon, because we actually get your profile image, so we could potentially have like the two icons fighting. Right? When one person attacks, it jumps over and hits the other one. Something like that would be kind of cool. Then we have each round, so we pull the keys. If you notice in the returned rounds, our rounds index is the round counter, and what that looks like is it's actually the index key. So what we need to do is we need to go through each key, which is our count list, and then we see how many there are. We go to 0, start at the 0 index, and we loop through each one until we go from the rounds and the count list of I. So whatever is at the index of whatever we're looped through of the rounds, it's going to return the string for that round. And then it's going to return that round index value, which is the all the part that has like the attacker, critical damage, P1 hit points, P2 hit points. So that's what it's going to do. And then if your hit points is less than 0, we're going to set it to 0. Otherwise, we're going to set your hit points to whatever the value is. And that's so that when you get a return value where your hit points have dropped into the negative, we don't show the negative values. And it has a 0.1 second delay to calculate all of these amounts here. And that is pretty much the whole thing. We've got our nav bar, so we have a bootstrap nav bar here where you have your form elements. We have your function call to fight. You have the on change, so when you type in here, it calls that P1 adjust, which is for adjusting the text size. And then we have our container, and it took me a little bit to get it to look as it did. I'm still not super happy with it, but it's using a flexbox in column mode, and each player takes up a full height of the window. So if I inspect this, you can see that this is a single, but the actual column itself is a full height, and we tell it to align the items in the center, and that puts them right in the middle of the screen, whatever the height is. The only one I'm not really happy with is the logo is not center because it actually has a bigger amount in here, so I might just crop it, and that would hopefully make it go more in the center. We'll figure that part out later. But that's basically the layout for the page, and that's it. That's exactly how it works. So basically you can go like this, and then we'll fight, and you can watch the hit points drop down by rows, or by rounds. And yeah, I would like to have like animations, maybe sound effects, you know, like the old fighting, punching and kicking sounds and stuff like that. Kind of neat. So anyways, I hope you like it. If you have any comments or suggestions or anything on what to do, go ahead and leave a comment down below, and we will talk to you guys later.